Hi everyone, it's Allison. I'm here a little bit different setting today. I'm actually at work and I actually only work with 3 other people in my office and they're off today. And I really wanted to get this recorded and uploaded, so I went ahead and took a few minutes at lunchtime, and I kind of have a light in my face just for a little better lighting, so hopefully it doesn't look terrible. And I am holding the paper just in case you're wondering what I'm looking at, but I did write down a few notes. So I have something interesting and new for you today. Katie, my good friend here on YouTube from Katie Cooks and Crafts, I mention her all the time in all of my videos. She and I were trying to come up with a collab video. We have a lot of similar interests and kind of similar things that we talk about here on YouTube. So we talked about a few things, and finally Katie came up with a great idea to do a garden tag. I don't know the official name of the garden tag, but I will have that up once the video is uploaded. And we basically got together and came up with a dozen garden questions that we found interesting and are curious about other people in their garden. So I think it's the perfect amount of questions, and I love the questions we came up with. In case you're curious, Katie from Katie Cooks and Crafts, I will have her channel and her video that she's doing on this exact tag in the description box below. But she does lots of really neat like garden tours in relation to this kind of video, garden tours and DIY things. Like I know she just put her clothesline, like how she made her clothesline up, and she cloth diapers, and she ferments things, and she does her weekly grocery hauls and her weekly meals and meal prep. And she also does like a project roundup kind of video, which I always think really neat. She crochets and sews and makes all kind of little neat things like for her daughter and all that. So I just really love her channel, and I really like her personality. So definitely go check her out. Tell her Allison sent you. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the questions that we came up with, and I will put all of the questions in the description box below so that you can see them in case you missed anything that I said. Number 1, describe your garden. So this is basically describing my garden, but specifically what zone/climate are you in? How much sun does your garden get? How old is your garden? What type of garden is it? Etc. So I have a vegetable garden. I do have beds at my house that are flat for flowers and plants, but specifically I'm going to be talking about my vegetable garden. I am in southeastern Pennsylvania, so I am in zone 6. It's 6B to be specific. I actually had to look that up. I knew I was in zone 6, but I didn't know I was in 6B. And it is hardiness from 0 to -5 degrees Fahrenheit. So I can plant things that can withstand that kind of a temperature that will come back. That is the zone climate I'm in. We have hot summers and cold winters, and the spring and fall is getting to be shorter seasons, but we do have a spring and we have a fall. So it is best, to start kind of planting in the spring and then go from there. I try and do a couple different plantings, so I'll get into that later. My garden does get pretty much each point in my garden receives full sun at some point during the day. Some places don't get full sun all day, and I try and plant accordingly. Like I'll do a lot of the greens or more sensitive kind of vegetables in those areas, and then in areas where I want a lot of sun, like the peppers and the tomatoes and all that, I'll plant in the areas that have full sun. I have 8 raised beds this season. I had 6 last season. That goes along with how old is my garden. It is only 2 years old. We've only been in our home for 2 years. So this is the 2nd season we've been able to plant. And I love everything about my garden. So I'll tell you a little bit more. I wanted to mention what we grow. So we currently have all kinds of herbs, and by all kinds I mean all kinds, everything from pineapple sage and lemon balm to catnip to the basic rosemary, basil, cilantro, thyme, oregano, lavender, chives, all of that. I mean, marjoram, chamomile, I have it all. Marigolds I even grow for my chickens. Herbs really have a lot of natural benefits for chickens, so I grow all those. We have asparagus, which is in its second year, so next year it'll be nice and perfect. I'm very excited about that. We have watermelon, we have blueberries, we have figs, we have strawberries, we have potatoes, we have onions, we have 5 kinds of onions. Red, white, yellows, sweet, super sweet. We have rhubarb. We have 2 kinds of pickles, 2 kinds of cucumbers, pickling cucumber and a regular cucumber. We have Brussels sprouts. We have romaine lettuce, 2 kinds of leaf lettuce, kale, Swiss chard, leeks, 2 kinds of carrots, a shorter fat carrot and a long carrot. We have beets. We have green beans. We have tomatoes, all kinds of tomatoes, like literally like 20 tomato plants. Peppers, all kinds. Not a whole lot of hot peppers. We do mainly like sweet and banana peppers, things like that. I think we have 1 jalapeno. What else do we have? We have, I think that's it. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, radishes. And that's about it that I can think of off the top of my head. So those are a lot of the different plants that we have. And I just wanted to mention all the different things that we grow in our raised beds. So you can really grow everything in your raised beds. They're really great. I highly recommend trying a raised bed if you haven't. Question 2, what is your favorite thing to grow? I really didn't give this a whole lot of thought, but I think now that I think about it, I really enjoy growing like herbs and lettuces and things of that nature. I mean, I'm going to clump them all together. There's not one specific herb I like to grow, but I just love the scents and how beautiful they make my garden look and how fruitful they are. Like, they just keep giving all season. Like, all season long they last. It's not like a pepper and a tomato, and although I like those vegetables, they just don't like, you don't get anything right away, and then once they've given all they give, they just kind of fizzle out. I do enjoy root crops also, just because they're so easy to maintain, but I think my favorite thing to grow are herbs. I would say specifically herbs. They have so many uses. You know, my chickens use them. You can dry them and then use them the rest of the year. They flower, so they're like a flower and a vegetable at the same time. You can use them with all sorts of meals. Like I said, they put off a beautiful scent and they just look so nice, and I love growing herbs. So I would say that's my favorite thing to grow. I am getting more into fruit, so I think once I get a handle on that more, that I'll really enjoy that once I get that down, but for now, that's where I'm at. Question number 3, is there something you wish you could grow but cannot because of space, climate, cost, etc.? I think I wish I could grow citrus. I would love if I could grow oranges and lemons and limes. I just feel like they're so costly at the store and they're so easy to grow if I could just grow them, but I can't because of climate. So I think that's one thing I could grow. I probably could grow them if I took them inside and put them in pots and all that, but I just don't really want to put forth that kind of effort. So I would say that's one thing that I wish I could grow that I can't. Question number 4, is there anything you regret planting? Not really. I would say the one thing I regret planting that I have planted in the past is like garlic and horseradish. For some reason, I just didn't do it well or didn't do it right. I didn't try it again this season, but I did it last season and I got absolutely nothing. And I let them go all season thinking there would be something there, and there was actually growth, and this huge plant grew up and there was nothing there. So I don't know what I did wrong on that, but that's a couple of things that I kind of regret planting, that I'll have to look into it and see if I can redeem myself a little bit. So question number 5, what is your biggest challenge in the garden? Our biggest challenge in the garden really is because we use a space that is both for our chickens and our vegetables. we really have to kind of put up a fencing around our vegetables, and they still get to certain spots of the vegetables, so we really have to watch that and make sure they don't destroy our plants. Last year we didn't do that. We made the mistake of not fencing, and like as soon as we would have a ripe tomato, it would be pecked at. So we lost a lot of things last year because we didn't take that extra measure and do that. So this year we've taken care of it, and I think we have a handle on it, so that's good. Question number 6. Do you use anything to protect your garden from critters? I mentioned briefly earlier that we do have a fenced-in garden. So we have 2 gates, one at the front and one at the back. I'll put a link to my garden tour below so you can see. I'll just put in my most recent garden tour so that you can see how our garden is laid out. But we do have a gate in the front, and it's all fenced around with, I think it's 4 or 5 foot high fencing. Rabbits do sneak under the fence, but we have the raised beds and then they're fenced, so they really can't get to anything unless something's like hanging down or, you know, they reach up into the fence. So it is pretty much protected. Inside the fence we have all of our raised beds, and then we have our chicken coop, which is also fenced for an outside run, but I let them free range in the garden during the day, so they do get I do have to also protect the raised beds, so I fence those as well. So everything's really protected from any kind of critter. We do have groundhogs nearby, so if they really wanted in there, I'm sure they could get in there. That's just the thing though, you know, from certain critters, it's like, if they want in, they're gonna get in. So there's only so much you can do. I feel like we are doing what works for us right now. We don't really have a problem necessarily. But if you do have chickens, along with chickens come mice in the winter time, but I don't really see them right now. So I think we have that all under control. Question number 7. How many plantings do you do each year? So like I mentioned earlier also, we really do one main planting each year, and that's in the spring. Some items we plant all spring, summer, and into the fall to harvest. So we really can't replant, but there are things like leafy greens and beets and carrots and things like that, beans. Usually with the beans, I replant more beans where they were, because they really don't take all that long to produce. Where the root crops are, I might plant another planting of beets just because we really love beets. The leafy greens, I might do something else. You know, I try and just replant either the same item twice or a different item in those areas that we lose. So I do try and do, I would say, 2 plantings each year essentially, but I just kind of time it right. Some things I will plant in one area and then I'll leave a couple rows and I'll plant those like a month later, so I know that they take a little while, but they're still going to come up and I'm still going to get 2 harvestings out of the bunch actually. So that's a good thing to do. And just a little piece of advice, I guess, is, you know, if you only have a small area and you really want to plant 2 rows of beans, plant 1 row of beans, and then in a month or a month and a half, plant another row of beans. That way you'll get some varying picking times, and if you really aren't into preserving or anything, you can really get the most eating out rather than having so many beans you don't know what to do with and you have to give half of them away. What's the point at that point? You know, just plant 1 row. But if you really want to get the most out of your vegetables, I recommend doing it that way. Question number 8. Do you use a greenhouse? Do you use it year-round or only in the winter months? So I guess the first answer to that question is no, I do not have a greenhouse. I would love one though. I have asked my husband to maybe work on a DIY project. I'm curious, please, whoever does this tag, if you have one, I would love it if you could give more information on that. I'm very interested in having one, even a small one, just for winter planting and different things. But I just feel like it would really expand my gardening skills and things if I had a greenhouse. I would just love one. So that's the answer to that question. Kind of short and sweet since I don't have one. Question 9. How do you manage the excess from your garden? Have you ever anonymously left a zucchini or other produce on your neighbor's porch? So I love this question. Katie came up with this question, and the thing about leaving something on your neighbor's porch, I just love that question. I'm so curious to hear what people have to say. How do you manage excess from your garden? First of all, any excess we really try and give to family, neighbors, friends, coworkers, anyone who's close to us that we know maybe they don't have a garden or they have a very small garden or something like that. So we really try and share as much as we can with that kind of thing. I also give a lot of the leafy greens and things like that to my chickens, so I share with them. And finally, we do preserve quite a bit, so if we have any excess that we're not able to eat fresh, we do try and preserve. Not as much as I'd like, but I'm hoping more and more as time goes on. So, and then the second part, have you ever anonymously left a zucchini or other produce on your neighbor's porch? And I have to say I have not. I have included things before in like a basket for Christmas, like some jam, and I definitely give things to my neighbors, like eggs and things from my garden, but I've never just anonymously left anything, even a zucchini, on my neighbor's porch. So I'll have to do it sometime and see if they figure out who it is, which I think I'm the only person on the block with a huge garden, so I think they would get it. Question number 10. Do you preserve your garden harvest for later use? What is your favorite preservation method? Yes, we preserve our garden for later use. We don't preserve all of it, so there is some leftover that doesn't either get used or, like I said, we give to other people or our chickens get to eat. But we do can and freeze. Those are the two methods that we generally do. My favorite preservation method, I would have to say, is freezing, simply because it's the easiest way. But I think canning is the most effective way. I just think you get a longer preservation out of canning. There are just certain things you can't freeze, like jam and pickled beets and, you know, things like that that you just really can't freeze. But in terms of like freezing just blanched beans, beets, corn, anything like that, I think that it's fresher tasting in the freezer. But like I said, you don't get a long time out of that. So it's just kind of personal preference, I think, and depending on what time, how much time you have to preserve the items that you have, it's really just personal preference. Question 11. Is there anything you primarily grow for storing and using later? So if you grow, you know, you might grow garlic or horseradish, the two items that I fail at, for like chopped or minced garlic to can and preserve, specifically for that reason. Like you might not use a whole lot of fresh garlic and want to keep it in cans. You might want to make horseradish, like ground horseradish, rather than putting it in something. You might only grow cucumbers, like the pickling kind, for pickles. There are lots of things that you can grow simply to can or preserve in a pickling fashion or any kind of way like that. We do grow things primarily for storing, like beets. We're not going to eat a whole harvest of beets in a couple of weeks. We do like to put them in different salads and things like that, so I really try and preserve a lot of those. Another thing that we try and preserve is like relishes or something like that, and that takes up, you know, green tomatoes, peppers, things like that. Beans, same thing. But we do like to eat a lot of those items fresh at the same time. There isn't one thing that's specifically for preserving. But I think if I did grow like horseradish or something like that, it would be for preserving. One thing I guess is the closest to it are our onions. You really have to dry those, and those are really for use all fall, winter, and into the spring for next year. That and potatoes. So that is one thing I guess I would say that we use for storing for later use. Number 12, any favorite gardening YouTubers you watch? Well, of course, I'm biased, but Katie from Katie Cooks and Crafts, I just love her garden, similar interests, things like that, as I explained earlier. I also really enjoy watching Luann from It's Always Something Around Here. She has a nice garden, and that's really about it. I'm really not familiar with a whole lot of gardening channels on YouTube. There is like Becky from Becky's Homestead. She has a garden, but you don't really see a whole lot of it. Yeah, there's not a really like specific gardening channel that I watch a lot of. other than those YouTubers that I mentioned. And finally, I just wanted to tag a few people. I'm going to tag 4 people, but please, anyone who's watching this video, please feel free to do it and pass it along. We'd love to hear from all kinds of gardeners, and who knows, maybe we'll find some new gardeners out there and some new channels. But I'm going to tag Nikki from A Farmhouse Full, Luann from It's Always Something Around Here, Genevieve from Mama Natural, just curious to see what Genevieve has, and Becky from Becky's Homestead. I'd really like to hear some more about them and their gardens. And thank you to Katie for doing this with me. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad we got a chance to finally work on something together. So I hope you all enjoyed this tag. I hope you enjoyed hearing my answers, and I can't wait to hear from you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.